and Yelena were two of the most hated characters in the Attack on Titan series, and for good reasons. They were both fanatics who supported Eren's cruel plan to wipe out humanity. They were ruthless and vicious, and they killed anyone who stood in their way. They were both delusional and arrogant, but they were also different in some ways. Floch was a coward and a bully who whined and complained a lot. Yelena was a leader and a spy who schemed and manipulated a lot. So, I wanted to compare these two and explore how they reflected the themes and fit into the overall story of Attack on Titan. I also wanted to find out why the hell y'all hated Floch more than Yelena. Spoiler alert, apparently it's got nothing to do with his hair. One of the main themes of Attack on Titan was the cycle of violence and hatred that plagued humanity, both within and outside the walls. The series explored the causes and consequences of the cycle, as well as the moral dilemmas and ethical choices that the characters faced in their struggle for survival and freedom. Floch and Yelena were two characters who embodied different aspects of these themes, as they both resorted to violence and extremism in their support of Eren's plan to activate the Rumbling, a cataclysmic event that would unleash millions of colossal titans to trample the world and wipe out all life except for the Eldians on Paradis Island. Let's start with Yelena, the leader of the anti-Marleyan volunteers and the loyal follower of Zeke Yeager. What made her tick? What were her motives and goals? How did she relate to others? Well, her motives were personal, her goals were historical, and her relations with others were friendly, to say the least. Yeah, friendly. Yelena's obsession with Zeke and his plan stemmed from her desire to find meaning and significance in her life. She believed that by supporting Zeke, she could be part of something greater than herself and that she could make history by changing the world. She also believed that by witnessing the power of the Titans, she could experience something extraordinary and transcend her mundane existence. In other words, Homegirl was bored and wanted some action. However, Yelena's pursuit of significance was ultimately pointless and self-defeating. She failed to realize that Zeke's plan was not a noble or altruistic one, but a genocidal and nihilistic one. Zeke intended to use the founding Titan to sterilize all the Eldians, preventing them from reproducing and eventually wiping them out. Yelena blindly followed Zeke's plan without questioning its morality or its consequences. She also ignored the feelings and opinions of the Eldians themselves, who did not want to be eradicated, but to live in peace and dignity. Yelena did not care about the lives of the people she affected, nor did she respect their choices. She only cared about her own agenda and her own satisfaction, and that was to see Zeke's plan succeed. She also lost touch with her own identity and personality, becoming a mere follower and admirer of Zeke. She did not have any personal goals or aspirations, but only lived to serve Zeke and his plan. Yelena represented one of the darker aspects of humanity, the tendency to seek significance and power at the expense of others. She also represented the danger of fanaticism,
It's fanaticism.
and blind faith, the willingness to follow a leader or a cause without questioning or challenging it. Yelena showed how human beings could lose their humanity and become monsters in their quest for meaning and importance. Another theme of the series was the idea of change and the challenges that come with it. The series depicted a world that was constantly changing, both for the better and for worse. It also showed the different reactions and responses that people had to change, such as acceptance, resistance, adaptation, or innovation. The series also examined the motives and the methods that people use to initiate or prevent change, and the benefits and the risks that entail. Yelena represented a radical and reckless approach to change, one that was based on violence and revolution. She believed that by supporting Zeke's plan, she could change the world, whether it was for the better or worse, though I doubt she even cared that much. She did not consider the negative and harmful effects that her actions might have on the world and the people who lived in it. Now, Floch, on the other hand, was a survivor of the battle to retake Shiganshina, where afterwards he developed a nihilistic and fatalistic worldview, believing that the only way to end the cycle of violence was to embrace it. In recognition of that, he became a loyal follower of Eren, who at that point had become the embodiment of violence and hatred that he began to believe in. He also assumed leadership of the Jaegerists, a faction of radicalized soldiers and civilians who supported Eren's coup against the military and the government. Floch was ruthless and cruel in his methods, killing anyone who opposed or betrayed Eren. Due to his fear and cowardice, Floch essentially chose the easy way out by supporting the annihilation of the world over the more difficult route of trying to convince the world that they weren't monsters, the little bitch. Unlike Yelena, who followed and believed in a specific individual, Floch believed in what Eren represented, resistance through violence and sheer hatred. Yelena viewing Zeke as a god and Floch viewing Eren as a devil could also be seen as symbolic and representative of the extreme fanaticism that we often witness in modern day cults. For example, Yelena in a way reminded me of those who worship preachers as gods instead of the actual god they should follow. They become so devoted that they excuse their leaders' awful behaviors and sometimes even crimes, losing sight of their moral values due to their extreme devotion, if they had any to begin with. This left me wondering, why was Floch more hated by fans than Yelena? I mean, both of them were terrible people, but I kind of expected the disdain to be, well, I don't know, equal. The general consensus is that Yelena was well liked for being a complex and fascinating character who had a lot of depth and mystery. People appreciated her role in the story, even if they sometimes wondered if she was off her meds. They also liked her calm and confident personality and her dry sense of humor, which was a welcome change from the usual sobbing and or shouting that you get used to in the world of Attack on Titan. Her fans believed that Yelena had a good reason for her actions and that she was not evil, but rather misunderstood. Or the simplest answer, okay, I get it, but couldn't you have said the same thing about Floch?
No, don't you dare.
But I mean...
Absolutely not. What is wrong with you?
What isn't wrong with her?
But seriously guys, he was just misunderstood. He wasn't a coward. He was just cautious. He wasn't a hypocrite. He was flexible. He wasn't a fascist. He was patriotic. He wasn't a fanatic. He was passionate. He didn't betray and hurt his former friends. He only wanted to educate and enlighten them. He didn't support Eren's genocide plan. No, he supported Eren's peace plan. He wasn't irritating and boring. He was charming and witty. He wasn't a villain. He was a hero who needed a hug and a haircut. Seriously, dude, how did you go from bad to worse? Have y'all learned nothing from Levi? Look at those sharp edges. Personally, I disliked Yelena more. Floch had a personal stake and attachment to his homeland and his people, and he wanted to protect them from the outside world that threatened their safety. He was terrified, to say the least. Floch was also honest and straightforward about his drift and beliefs. He did not hide or lie about his intentions, allegiances, and actions. Floch was a well-written and complex villain who represented the harsh reality of war and the human condition. He was a product of his environment and experiences. Yelena, on the other hand, had no personal connection or attachment to Paradis, did not give a damn about her native country Marley, or anyone for that matter except for Zeke. She was also deceitful and manipulative about her motives and plans, and she hid and lied about her affiliations and intentions, all because she felt irrelevant. Now, that doesn't mean she was a terribly written character. On the contrary, she was a dangerous, mysterious, and manipulative character who had a twisted obsession with Zeke and on making her mark on history. She was an unpredictable wildcard whose actions could change the course of the story, all of which made her stand out. Yet, Floch was more hated and despised by the audience who saw him as much more atrocious, while Yelena was more liked and admired by the audience who saw her as a rebel and a hero. I still don't get it. Both Floch and Yelena were examples of how the cycle of violence and hatred could corrupt and twist the human mind. They both were led to adopt extremist and fanatic ideologies. However, due to different reasoning, essentially Floch out of fear and trauma, and Yelena out of, well, probably boredom, they both followed charismatic, powerful, and morally corrupt leaders whom they idolized and obeyed without question. They both committed atrocities and crimes, which they rationalized and defended with their twisted logic and morality. In other words, they were both monsters that none of you should have been idolizing in the first place, for heaven's sake.